Ladies and gentlemen, we have the privilege today of hosting a true luminary in the realm of corporate social responsibility, Miss Anisha Narula, the head of CSR at MakeMyTrip Foundation. Welcome, Anisha. Uh,
Thank you.
Anisha's journey and contribution in the field of CSR are nothing short of inspiring, and today we have the unique opportunity to delve into the experiences, insights, and transformative power of CSR with her. To commence our discussion, could you reflect on defining that moment or experience in your journey in the world of CSR that deeply influenced your approach in corporate social responsibility and philanthropy? And we're eager to gain insights on how profound this influence was in shaping the course of Make My Trip Foundation and making it impactful. Over to you, Anisha.
Great. Thanks so much, Nishita. And, I think for me personally, when I entered this space, it was more from an education side, and I had my own stories. But currently, if I think of what Make My Trip Foundation is doing, I think we really believe that the only negative impact of travel is the environmental degradation that comes with it.
Right.
And apart from that, travel is great, be it for the economies, for just understanding local culture, awareness, exposure. So at Make My Trip Foundation, we constantly strive to play the role of a catalyst,
Right.
and positively impact the destinations, the people, environment, and so on. So, we work towards building resilience and sustainability in destinations. And we do that through our twin pillars of climate action and community empowerment. But I must share the timing of this conversation is great because just yesterday, we launched a campaign that imbibes the core and the crux of what we stand for. It's called Travel Magar Pyar Se.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, and it's based on the concept that, up until now, we've always wished our travelers well, right? I mean, bon voyage, safe travels, have a great trip, and so on. But I think now we really need to start wishing our destinations well. So it's time to spread awareness and ensure that we leave the destinations better than we find them. Because one, these destinations are also someone's home, and we sure wouldn't like it if our home is left in a mess. And B, it's our responsibility to ensure that these destinations can thrive for the generations to come.
Right, absolutely. No, and thank you so much for bringing out some of the points that actually make up my follow-up questions today. Uh, Loved how you mentioned that traveling sustainably is important and how that itself poses a lot of challenges when traveling is concerned in terms of carbon emission, resource consumption, waste generation. And love the idea of travel magar pyar se. If you can share with us how Make My Trip Foundation, as a prominent player in the travel industry, lays a strong emphasis on responsible tourism and practices, and maybe shed more light about travel magar pyar se as well.
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, we work through the twin pillars of climate action and community empowerment. And, we do a lot of work in terms of afforestation, in terms of waste management, working with the local communities, and so on. And on the business front, if you look at Make My Trip,
Mhm.
uh, we are driven to making great trips for everyone, right? But coming back to Travel Magar Pyar Se and how it ties in, is that to ensure that we can continue doing that for the generations to come, it is equally important to shift the focus on the destinations. And that's what we at Make My Trip Foundation are doing. So let me, help you understand this better through an example.
Mhm.
And I'll share something about our waste management initiatives.
Sure.
So we've been working in Uttarakhand for 5+ years now. In the initial 3 years or so, we were working at Sahastradhara, which are these falls at the outskirts of Dehradun.
Mhm.
And we were doing a full end-to-end waste management project.
Mhm.
And over the last 2 years, we've been working at Kempty Falls near Missouri.
Yes.
And our project includes an end-to-end waste management plan. So, right from installation of bins, door-to-door collection, encouraging waste segregation at source, setting up a unit for dry waste segregation, where they bale the plastic and all the other different dry waste components, and they further connect it to the recyclers.
Mhm.
So, looking at the end-to-end bit.
Right.
And of course, I think no waste management project is complete without really focusing on behavior change. So, a lot of awareness sessions, sensitization sessions, and so on. And we've collected probably somewhere over 140 metric tons of waste over these years. Similarly, in Andamans, we are working in Neil Island.
Right.
Again, small islands, waterlogged, and gives us the scope to really you know, play around with some really good initiatives. So in our first phase, we, set up a public convenience unit where there were changing rooms, showers, lockers, and so on at the beach. And, all of this was powered through solar energy and it was a good facility for tourists to come to, and everything was managed sustainably, like looking at how the gray water is being treated and all of that. Along with this, we'd also set up water ATMs or water refilling stations,
Mhm.
and we would give the tourists a bottle of water, a reusable bottle, and guide them on where all they can find these refilling spots, mainly to curb the focus on single-use plastic, I think, which as tourists, all of us are at some point guilty of, using. We are also doing a project in North Goa. So, I
Mhm.
mean, the idea behind all of this is that at the crux of it, it is very important to understand that majority of these high tourist influx places, they have a huge floating populations.
Right.
And many times it's almost 80 to 100x of its original population. Like if you look at a place like Missouri,
Mhm.
uh, the population size would be 30, 40,000 probably, as per, maybe the last publicly available data. But if you look
Right.
at the amount of tourists entering um, Missouri and Kempty Falls region, it's insane. So what we try to do is really future proof these destinations, starting now.
Right.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And this is absolutely fantastic to know how holistically Make My Trip Foundation has been working towards not just conserving, but also restoring and maintaining it for sustainability. You also briefly mentioned about deforestation. In light of that, if there are any specific strategies or initiatives taken by Make My Trip Foundation on deforestation that you would like to share, or your own thoughts about how can we tackle the challenge of deforestation?
Sure, sure. Nishit, I'm glad you asked because actually afforestation consists of a significant part of the work we do. And we've been working in multiple states, Rajasthan, Kashmir, Odisha, Gujarat, Sikkim, Uttarakhand. So, plantation definitely is a very, very important, pillar for us. And our work in Rajasthan goes way back. We've been working there, undertaking plantation on community land or the commons, as they call them, and the ownership and sustenance is entirely taken care of by the local community. So they're deeply involved in the process, and they equally gain from it through a very just
Right.
and fair model, of equitable distribution. In Gujarat, we are working on mangrove plantation.
Mm-hmm.
And the vision is we are working with Vikas
Mm-hmm.
Center for Development, and the vision is to contribute towards a bioshield
Mm-hmm.
or the Great Green Wall of Gujarat.
Mm-hmm.
And mangroves have proven to be a boon for the ecosystem with, coastal protection, enhancing the biodiversity. They sequester 5 to 8 times the carbon as compared to terrestrial forests. And they also provide a lot of economic benefits through fisheries, through crab farming, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the work we've been doing there. And we've been working in Uttarakhand. Very interesting story. So, we found really good partners in Uttarakhand as well. And, I think, we all know that long back when the British Raj, when the British government came to India, there was a mass exploitation of oak and sal and deodar trees,
Hmm.
etc., for commercial use.
Hmm.
And that led to a substantial loss of the forest cover in the Himalayas.
Hmm. Hmm.
But to compensate for this, pine trees were planted because they're
Right.
fast growing, right? However, these pine trees need a lot more water, right? And they don't have the capacity to retain water.
Yes.
So, their growth actually eventually, ends up drying up all the natural springs that we have.
Right.
And these dried needles and seeds are also very inflammable. And I think we all
Yes.
have been seeing that over the last many years with the rampant increase in forest fires, etc. So, I mean, through all of it, what I'm trying to really share is also that the focus on plantation activities is not something that the foundation does in isolation. So it's not like we'll just see a patch of land and think that, oh, let's plant here.
Right.
It's a very thought through thing. We want to make sure we know what we are contributing towards. We are either regenerating or we are planting fresh, but with the help of the community so that the communities also benefit. There's a long term plan kept in mind so that it's not like you just plant and then there's not enough or good enough survival and so on. So yeah, so definitely planting is a huge pillar for us, and we do it in a very thought through manner, with a lot of focus on what the land is, who the community is, and how are they going to benefit.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anisha. And uh, it's really great to see how holistically not just the burden of traveling, but carbon emissions is also and tackling those situations is also very much a part of Make My Trip Foundation strategy. Interestingly, it doesn't stop there, and travel also includes a lot of conservation of the rich Indian heritage that we have, diverse cultures and myriad of art forms that we cannot ignore become an integral part of travels that we do. And preserving these cultural art forms or the cultural wealth is also very essential, as it includes livelihoods and cultural aspects and historic aspects. A lot of artists, craftspeople are dependent on it as well. How does Make My Trip Foundation play a role in safeguarding these traditions? If you would like to share some light on it.
Sure, sure. It's a great question. Also, because I think cultural heritage and sustainable livelihoods are so deeply intertwined. Um, and, like I mentioned earlier, the twin pillars. So, community empowerment being one of them, we have a very different way of viewing it. So, we look at it from the lens of tourism, or even better, from the lens of the benefits of tourism trickling down to the native communities, right? So, for instance, we are running a community-based tourism project in Uttarakhand,
Hmm.
right? Now, here the focus has been on empowering these communities and creating this sustainable livelihood option for them. So, we do a lot of capacity building, we do training, all of that, and then eventually empower them to set up homestays,
Right.
but not change the physical structures that
Hmm.
bring out the original cultural heritage value of these houses,
Right.
to offer local cuisines, to again preserve all these things, to conduct trails and treks in the forest areas
Hmm.
for the
Hmm.
tourists, but while doing that, to share the folklore, the folk songs, because when you visit these places and you actually interact with the local communities, you realize that for such small things, They have such beautiful, songs and stories regarding maybe a different tree or a different fruit and so on. They have, the women of the community, they have songs, which is like a call for everyone to start leaving the forest because it's getting dark, and that's how they kind of relate to it.
Right.
So they start exiting one by one. And so it's really like, preserving such minute details becomes very interesting. Um, Similarly, we did this project in Kashmir, Baramulla district.
Mm-hmm.
We trained around 60 women in traditional handicraft work, the
Mm-hmm.
cruel work and tilla work. And we also provided them with market linkages, etc. And now, currently, these women have, they formed their self-help groups,
Mm-hmm.
and they're earning a livelihood from by selling these beautiful shawls and cushion covers, wall pieces, etc. So they're not only preserving their heritage, their cultural heritage, and creating a livelihood opportunity for them, but they're also actually growing it further,
Right.
spreading it further. And similarly, we also worked with guides, around 1,200, 1,500 guides in Uttar Pradesh,
Mm-hmm.
and upskilled them with the correct information, the right historical facts, the right chronology. Um, because, of course, that becomes very
Yeah.
important when they are, imparting this information further to the tourists. So yes, we found, I think, our own little ways of marrying sustainable livelihoods and cultural preservation, and we try to do whatever we can through these lines.
Oh, it's really really commendable how it all sinks in into an industry which otherwise is assumed not to be responsible, and you're paving the way and breaking the myth to making it sustainable, making it responsible. So thank you so much.
Just
Uh,
trying.
and I am also aware that besides how things absolutely intertwine into the travel industry, you go a step forward and also support education and scholarship initiatives. And it's really, really grateful. But how did that start and how did you go beyond alignment with business and take that up?
Sure, this is actually very interesting, because education is not one of the pillars that we work in, but yet we do run, a scholarship program for students. But to understand this, we'll have to, go back a couple of years, to the COVID era,
Mhm.
and so we undertook a lot of relief work, and
Yeah.
that's something we've always proactively done, like be it now recently during the Manali floods or back then.
Mm, mm,
So of course, the relief initiatives were focused on food and ration distribution, oxygen concentrators, and so on, like, whatever the need at that time was. But towards the end of the second wave, in 2021, we started thinking of how can we really sustain our impact here and what else can we do. And we realized that a lot of people, like, we lost a lot of lives, during those 2 years. Especially the second wave was very devastating. The hospitals were overcrowded. There was barely, like,
mm,
scope for people to revive once they fell in that loop. um, so that's when we kind of identified this area of a scholarship,
mhm.
and we felt that we must offer financial scholarship to students to pursue education. But this scholarship program came with a caveat. It was offered to those who lost their earning family members or parents to the pandemic.
Right.
So they were already dealing with so much, and we did not want them to be wondering and be thinking of how to really continue with their educational journey. And that's when we launched this. And currently, we are running the fourth consecutive year of this scholarship program.
Thank you so much, Anisha, for such a wonderful insight into how different sectors and thematic areas, from sustainable livelihoods to environment to education, are actually marrying and moving forward and accelerating the 2047 aspiration of India being a forefront in the development space. My final question to you now would be any advice that you would like to offer to the younger generation, especially those watching who aspire to make a positive impact in the world, and how can they make sustainable choices while traveling?
Great. I think something that really needs to be spoken of. While I will share some points, I think I'm going to start by stealing the tagline of a popular TV advertisement from some years ago. Just keep it simple, as simple as that. So, learn how travel impacts the environment, local economies, culture, and make the conscious choice to do it positively. Stay at greener places, greener hotels, use public transport, carpool, support local businesses, when you're traveling. Engage with local cultures. There's so much to learn, and it's a beautiful process. Carry reusable items. It's the most basic things. Water
True.
bottles, cutlery sets, bags is the most basic thing. And take souvenirs back with you that you purchase from the local markets. But don't leave behind your souvenirs there. The hills don't need your plastic bottles. The beaches don't need your cigarette butts. So please don't leave your souvenirs behind there. And last but not the least, talk about this. Educate your friends, your family. Make sustainable travel cool. Talk more about it. It is the next big thing, and it better be a thing that we adopt before it becomes something that is really forced upon us, because this is the future. We have to move towards it to really safeguard our environment, because there is no planet B.
No, this is fantastic, especially because there are more travelers now than before, and it's only going to increase. And like you absolutely rightly said, we can't leave our souvenirs behind in the places we travel to. So thank you so much for bringing this out and for the advice that we all should follow during our travels.
Thanks, Nishita. It's been lovely speaking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.